Hey kids, it's Miles and Nada here, and we're going to do a little animation. We're going to cover two ways of animating. We're going to cover frame by frame, which is the old school way to do things, and we're going to get into some newfangled tweening as well. But first we'll start off with frame by frame. And frame by frame animation is pretty much just what it sounds like, where you just make a frame, draw something, make another frame, draw something, make another frame, draw something. There's nothing fancy about it. So let's see what that looks like in Flash. First thing to call your attention to down here on the timeline is you have a blank circle anytime you start off a document, and that's what we call a blank keyframe. Blank keyframe allows you to start drawing in it, and then sure enough, down here on the timeline, the keyframe is no longer blank. It's a filled-in black circle, which means that there's something in that keyframe. If we remove that frame by right-clicking or using your stylus, that little thumb button on it, or control-clicking, I'll just say right-click just to keep it simple, and I choose Remove Frames. Now, there's no blank keyframe there anymore, so when I go to draw in it, it won't let me. I get this warning dialog box. So in order to draw there, I need to right-click and choose Convert to Blank Keyframes, or Insert Blank Keyframes. I'll use Convert. Then we've got a blank keyframe and we can draw into it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select up to frame 9 here, and I'm going to right-click on it and say Convert to Blank Keyframes. And all that selected range is now filled with blank keyframes. Before we get started, I'm also going to go down here and change my frame rate. Down here it says 24 FPS. Whoops. You know, Flash is bugging out. It didn't update there. That was very strange, but there you go. Now we know. FPS, and that stands for frames per second. And that's how fast our animation will play back. So let's go ahead and set that to 12. The lower the frames per second, the slower the animation will play back. And what that means is basically we'll have to do a little bit less drawing, which is kind of nice. So, and for what we're doing, I think 12 frames per second will be fine. So we'll go ahead and set that to 12 FPS. Alright, cool. So, what I think I'm going to start off with here, I might just do a little stick figure walk cycle, and just kind of down and dirty just to show you the idea. I go in here and I draw on frame 1, I scrub out here to frame 5, which is the midpoint, and now I'm going to show you another animator's trick, and that's using what's called onion skinning. So down here you've got 3 boxes. Choose the one on the left, it says onion skin, click on that, and then you've got a little range bar here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these range sliders out, and sure enough what happens is that you can see my previous frame 1, even though I'm on frame 5 in the timeline. So that gives me a reference. Oops. Try something like this. And there we go. And I'll just go here to frame 9. And I'm going to copy my first frame. Right click, copy frames, go out here to frame 9, right click, and paste frames. I'm going to go to frame 3 and go ahead and draw my next frame here. It's ugly. Also ugly. Ooh, man. Alright, I'll leave it there for right now. Alright, I'll go to frame 7, and now I'll shorten my range a little bit so it doesn't get too confusing. And put this down here, something that. And now I'll play back my animation. I'll turn off onion skinning first, and I'll hit the return key. And there's my little animation so far. And I'll just go ahead and finish the tweening here. I'll turn onion skinning back on. Shorten the range down to, whoops, just 2 frames there. And see if I can figure this out here. It's pretty ugly, but I'm not too worried about what I'm doing here. Try to get something that just looks kind of decent. And one more. Oops. And let's see what we got here. Okay. Good enough for this demo. Alright, now what I'm going to do is turn off onion skinning, and I'm just going to set this up to loop. I'm going to go ahead and delete this here too. Okay. And I loop by saying control loop playback. It looks okay. You see there's a glitch at the end, and if you ask yourself, why is there a glitch? If you remember at the very beginning, I copied frame 1 into frame 9, and so frame 1 is the same as frame 9, and that means that when this goes back from frame 9, it loops back to frame 1, and it plays exactly the same frame twice. And we don't want that. We just use that as a reference. So I'm going to go here to frame 9, select it, right-click it, and choose Remove Frames. Now we have an 8-frame animation, but it'll loop back to what we want, which is frame 1. So now when I hit return, we have a smooth loop there, and we've created our first frame-by-frame animation that uses the principle of the loop. And loops are very, very common to all types of interactive work and games. If you think about run cycles, walk cycles like we just did here, flying cycles, idle cycles, death cycles. I guess that wouldn't be a cycle. But anyway, these little kind of self-contained animations, loops that can kind of continue on and on and on, are very flexible, useful things to be able to do for things like games and interactive work. So that's a quick demonstration of the frame-by-frame process.